Are you guys seeing the welcome slide right now, or?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. Just give us a few minutes here to let everybody else join in, then we'll get started. Thanks everybody for joining tonight. Just give us a few more minutes and we'll get started soon. All right, so it looks like our guests number has leveled off a bit, so we'll go ahead and get started for tonight. I want to welcome everybody to tonight's JUMPinar. Tonight we have Steve Masters and Dennis Lee, whose name I mistakenly left off the front slide here, but they're going to be discussing how to successfully navigate L&I, which is license and inspections, and obtain permits for your development projects. But before we get started and I introduce our guests here, Angie, do you have any updates on Jumpstart Germantown?
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for another JUMPinar. I first want to thank Derek for his 6 months of service as a Drexel co-op, and he is going to be staying on part-time as a Jumpstart coordinator helping us. And then also wanted to introduce Adriana Teta, who has joined us as our new Jumpstart co-op with Drexel for the next 6 months. We're very excited to have her on board. So you'll be seeing her a lot more on these Monday night sessions. And then as far as Jumpstart, we are still lending. We have closed a number of loans, I think 2 today and I think 3 last Friday. So things are definitely heating up. So if you have a project that you're interested in purchasing, renovating, and then either selling or renting out to folks, definitely check out jumpstartgermantown.com, jumpstartphilly.com, and send in your applications and we will take a look at them. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Angie, and welcome, Adriana. So before I introduce our guests, I want to just go into the process for how to ask questions and whatnot. You can use the Q&A tab, which is at the bottom of your Zoom control bar there. It looks like 2 little chat bubbles. You'll just click that and type in your question, and Adriana, Angie, and I, you guys have 2 similar names now. We'll review the questions and sort of sort through them and bring them up when they're relevant, or save them to the end. But usually we get through every question that's asked, so please don't hesitate to do that. And we're going to try something new tonight. We're going to try and unmute your microphone, or at least allow you to talk when your question is being addressed. So hopefully if there's any follow-up you have, you can converse with us a little bit. And we're just testing it out. So if you do want to ask more about your question, just know that you can unmute your mic and discuss while it's being answered. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guests here. First is Steve Masters, who has spent 12 years at the Philadelphia City Council, where he drafted many groundbreaking and innovative bills. Steve also served as Council President Anna Verna's zoning lawyer for over 10 years. He launched Just Laws, which has scored major victories for his clients as an innovative social impact law firm in Philadelphia that combines the traditional legal services with strategic consulting around political and community engagement. Steve will draw on his extensive experience as he joins us tonight to discuss the difficult task of navigating L&I and obtaining permits. Also joining us is Dennis Lee, who is founder of the Consulting Group LLC, a diverse consulting firm focused on areas such as construction, zoning, environment, business development, strategic planning, workforce development, safety audits, public safety and community strategies, government relations, and business processes. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over to these guys for their presentation, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you to Jumpstart Germantown. I'm really happy to be here, and really happy to have Dennis Lee here with me. Whenever there's any issue that I have concerning permits, I'm not the guy that I go to. I go to Dennis Lee, and we have a very strong working relationship around all issues dealing with permits. So let me share my screen here. We're going to do a PowerPoint. Let's see, all right. Okay. So once again, we have background for myself and for Dennis. I do want to add that Dennis has a long and distinguished history of public service in the state Senate and in Philadelphia, and including working in one of the appeals boards, serving as one of the members of an appeals board for L&I. So Derek, why don't we go with our poll questions to kick off what we're doing here, and as the poll is shared, then I'll just tell folks that we're going to have 4 basic sections to the presentation tonight. We want to go through these relatively quickly and then really get to your questions, because we feel that it's going to be the most valuable for you, I think, and for us to really get into the details of the challenges and the obstacles that you're facing with L&I and permits. But for right now, we have 3 questions, initial questions about permits with L&I. So scroll through those, give us your responses, and then we should be having those, I think, finished up in like 45 seconds or so.
Yep, so the poll should be active for all attendees now. If you can't find it, it might be hidden behind another tab, but you should be able to just click your answers and hit submit, and we'll share them with the group in a second. About 40% is voted, so make sure you fill that out in 20 seconds.
Yeah, let's get a good voter turnout. You know, it'll bode well for what's happening in November.
That worked in the real world.
Yeah, so we are going to hit on 4 topics, as I said. We're going to start with permits, and Dennis is going to cover that mostly, and I'll chime in a bit, and then we'll touch on some zoning issues, and then inspections and code violations.
And I made a typo I was typing them in last minute. The last poll should be yes or no, not yes or nice. So sorry, my bad. All right, I'm gonna share the poll results now. So Steve, you should see them on your screen, the percentages there.
Okay. All right, so we have, do other people see the results or just me?
I believe other people see it, but you can go.
Okay, okay.
You can go through it.
So yeah, this is not surprising that most people find L&I to be frustrating, confusing, difficult, or terrible. I don't even think it's surprising to people in L&I that would be the case, unfortunately. So we have like 40% of folks that are getting permits themselves. Their GCs about a quarter of the time, and some combination of them is a quarter, and then only 10% use an expediter. So that's interesting. you'll learn a little bit more about what expediters do and why it's a good idea to use them. And then we have about a third who have been turned down on a building permit. Okay, great. So, so the first topic on permits. So Dennis, why don't you kick it off and kind of walk us through what is an easy permit, who can get it, because it sounds like a better deal than a standard permit, less hassle. So how does that work?
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. And after we do this presentation, I hope a lot more of you will use an expediter. But an easy permit normally is the owner can get that, as well as the owner occupied, as well as the general contractor. You don't have to have plans. However, for the most part, you will probably be required to have an engineer's report saying that you're not doing any structural issues. And it's very limited in what you can do. However, if you're doing minor renovations, if you're doing HVAC, there are pluses to getting an easy permit. One of the things that I want to just start off, even before you get to the permit side, when you first purchase your property, the first thing you need to do prior to purchasing it, you need to find out what exactly that property is zoned for. I think most people buy a property and say, for example, it may look like it's a duplex, it may look like it's multifamily, and come to find out once they purchase it, that it's a single family or the use has been changed. So the first thing you want to do is when you purchase a property, before you purchase a property, you want to talk to someone and find out exactly, or go to atlas.gov to find out exactly what that property is zoned for. Once that property is zoned for what you need it to be, then you can determine how much work needs to be done. And most times, if you're doing a rehab, you're not going to use an easy permit. You're going to go right to the standard, which requires a standard permit, which requires a zone. It could require a zoning permit first, then a building permit, mechanical, and thereafter. All of this is now done through the Eclipse system. One of the reasons why you need to use someone who does this all the time is because the frustrating part is when you have to deal with the additional information, as well as sometimes you may have to go to L&I. That means getting an appointment and what have you. So I suggest to everyone, project plan, because that's where you can lose a lot of money. Steve, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. So just, I'm actually going to kick it back to you for a little bit, Dennis. So
Go ahead.
Let's say somebody, one of the folks here in the JUMPinar buys a property or has a property. They're pretty sure that the zoning is for single family, which is what they want to use it for, but there's no indication that there ever was a zoning permit for single family. So is that going to be any kind of a problem for them if they go and submit through Eclipse for a building permit if they don't have a zoning permit that they can prove was ever issued?
Yes, it's going to be a problem if there's no zoning permit and they can't find the zoning permit in terms in the archives or what have you. It may cause a problem when it comes to submit a building permit. You must have a zoning permit prior to. If you're purchasing a property, I always tell folk that it's good to just go ahead and put in the zoning permit. If you don't need it, they'll let you know. And then, at least if you do need it, then you can, you already have the zoning permit, and that will allow you to get your building permit.
Okay. So how exactly, I know that I should have maybe put a poll question in for, because there's been a couple JUMPinars in the past with either Betsy Baldwin or some other representatives from LNI that went through Eclipse, and maybe some other folks on the JUMPinar tonight have already like gotten some training on Eclipse. But Dennis, how do you recommend people proceed if they, let's say they're just starting out, they're not necessarily thinking that it makes sense to hire somebody just to file for a permit? How difficult is it to use Eclipse and to get the permits that you need to start your project?
Well, first of all, Eclipse is something that you definitely need to get training on, as well as because when you're uploading documents, they have to be uploaded a certain way. They have to match with the drop boxes match with. And a lot of times your PDFs, if your PDFs are not made in a way that is recognizable by the Eclipse, you won't. I just had this issue with an engineer that was doing a major project. He couldn't upload his documents. And the reason why is because his PDFs were not written in a way that, or was not saved in a way that was recognizable by Eclipse. So I would say that you need the training. If you don't have the time, the critical piece here is budget and time. It's always good when you're planning a new project that everybody has a specific role. You need a lawyer to do specific things. You need a contractor to do specific things. You need an architect to do specific things. You need an expediter who deals with L&I all the time, dealing with the examiners all the time. So this is why it's not frustrating to me when I deal with L&I, is because I understand that it's time management, and it's also understanding and giving them exactly what they want.
So I think it was 10% of the folks on the webinar have used Expediter. So that means that there could be 90%, up to 90% of the folks that are participating tonight may not really know what an Expediter is and does. Can you just go into that a little bit and explain what it is you do?
Here's the Expediter is going to represent here's what an Expediter should do. The Expediter should be knowledgeable in the zoning codes, should be knowledgeable in all of the building permits and all of the permits that you need, and can kind of navigate you through that whole process by laying out exactly what permits you will need so that you can put it in your budget. Also, the reason why you use the Expediter is because of their relationships with L&I. Because of those relationships, some of the pitfalls that the everyday individual will fall into doesn't happen with a good Expediter, right? Now, listen, you pay for, you're gonna pay for, if you want things expedited, there is a fee for that you pay the city, but the Expediter is the person that is gonna go down to the city and fight for you on your behalf. To get your project to stay on timeline. So an Expediter is very useful. There's some good ones out there, just like anything else. There's some that claim that they know what they're doing, and then there's some that, quite frankly, shouldn't be doing it. So I would recommend, if you have in your budget, and I think you do, because if your budget is set on a certain timeline, an Expediter becomes a cost in it. Even if your general contractor is doing the permits for you, he's got a cost in there for permits and his time. And his time and his cost may be a lot higher than the normal Expediter.
Okay, great. So thank you. So let's go on to the zoning piece of it. So as you said, Very important to find out. Sometimes you're going to have a representation from a realtor, your broker, whoever you deal with, or even the sheriff if you're picking up properties at sheriff's sale. You want to independently verify what that zoning is on your property, and you just go to atlas.phila.gov, and it will you plug in your address, and you'll be able to see a ton about your property, including what the zoning category is.
And the violations too, Steve.
Excuse me?
And the violations.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to violations. Yeah. So if you have a sheriff's sale, well, everything, well, I guess the liens are taken care of, but not the code violations. So let's say you have a property that was retrofitted or broken, into a duplex or a triplex, only to come and find that it's still zoned single family, which is a fairly shocking revelation to have now that you've already purchased it and you're planning to make the money that make the costing work as a duplex or a triplex, and now you have to get a go and seek probably a zoning variance if it was zoned for single family in order to get that, or not. What happens if this property was once legally zoned for a duplex or a triplex? If you can go back into the zoning archive, which is also on the Atlas website, you may be able to see evidence back a number of years when a previous owner legalized a use that was for a higher density. And that if that use was consistently maintained over the years, then even if in the new rezoning of the property it was downzoned to single family, you still would be able to go to L&I and say, look, this is it was a legal non-conforming use, and I should be able to get a zoning permit for what it was permitted for in the past, because the zoning code allows past uses to be carried forward as long as they weren't abandoned. Now, I put the third piece up here, the repair and reconstruction piece. In the materials that you are going to get through email, maybe you've already received them by registering for the JUMPinar tonight. One of them is called a code bulletin, and so the zoning code is also accessible on the city's website. It doesn't answer all questions. It has many parts of it are somewhat vague or ambiguous. This is one of them. So what happens is L&I from time to time will issue what are called code bulletins, which is in a sense a kind of like a regulation that L&I does. And this one is dated April 17th of 2013. You're going to get a copy of it in your email. And it's called Repair and Reconstruction of Non-Conforming Structures. So let's say you buy a duplex or a triplex, and it was once legal to have that, but the current zoning is a single family. You want to fix it up. That's what you're doing, right? With Jumpstart Germantown. So depending on whether you are repairing it or reconstructing it, different rules apply. So what does the zoning code tell us about how do we know the difference between repair and reconstruction? You would think that would be a really important distinction that the zoning code would help out with some kind of a definition. But you'll find in the beginning of this code bulletin, they say, the zoning code, I'm going to quote here, the zoning code does not define repair or reconstruction. Therefore, it is unclear whether portions of a non-conforming structure may be reconstructed within its original footprint and height, nor is it clear to what extent repair becomes reconstruction. So the zoning code says that repairs to or renovation of a non-conforming structure that bring the structure into greater compliance with the building code are permitted. So that's a good thing. The city wants you to repair this building and make it into compliance with the building code, and that's what you want to do. But it also says in the zoning code that if you need to reconstruct a building because of some kind of a catastrophe, a fire, some kind of a vandalism, some kind of destruction that occurred, then there's a lot of restrictions as to whether you can reconstruct it the way it was before, or whether you have to meet the current building code standards, which of course a building that's quite a bit older is not going to be at all up to the standards of the current building code. So this code bulletin addresses that, and it comes out with a test. It basically says that if you are proposing, you're putting in a building permit, you want to fix up this this home. It could even be a single family home, but it doesn't meet the current code standards. If you're proposing, if you're on your building permit application, and if you're saying that you are going to replace less than 2/3 of the structural portions of the roof and the floor systems, and you're also not going to modify any of the exterior walls, then they would classify that as a repair and not a renovation. If you are, let's go over that again. If you are proposing to replace more than 2/3 of the structural portions of the roof and the floor systems, and if you're going to modify any of the exterior walls, then L&I says you are proposing new construction, which is reconstruction, and that therefore you have to meet the new current code, not the previous code. So then the next sentence says the replacement of the interior structural framing members coupled with modifying the exterior wall also constitutes substantial renovation and potentially changes the hazard level. So therefore, they're going to make you comply with the current building code. But they also helpfully say that our zoning code requires that where the meaning is ambiguous, which basically means if whatever the zoning code says is subject to multiple interpretations, then they're going to construe the meaning in favor of you, the property owner. So if it's close, if it's between, is it a repair or is it a renovation, they're supposed to give you the benefit of the doubt and say that it's a repair and allow you to fix up your building and not have to bring it up to current code. We're supplying you with a copy of this code bulletin, so that which I think is helpful to have. And so sometimes when you think about zoning, you only think about like, oh, okay, well, it's zoned for a duplex and I want a triplex and I got to get a variance. But here, the zoning also is going to impact on how you are applying for building permits and whether you have to comply with the old, more relaxed building code standards or whether you have to comply with the most up-to-date ones. On inspections. So a couple of different comments I have for you on inspections. I'm going to turn over to Dennis as well. So I wanted to hit 3 parts on inspections: preparing for them, scheduling them, and communicating. In preparing for an L&I inspection, so L&I is going to be whenever you pull a permit with L&I, they're going to be coming out at various intervals, depending on what your permit is for, to inspect it both in the midst of the work and then at the completion. This also applies if you have a code violation. You're going to have had an inspection that came out and found a violation, and we're going to deal with those violations in a little bit. When you're preparing for an inspection, you want to think through what it is, what do I want this inspector to find when he or she comes on my property and is looking. So you want to be familiar with the different parts of either if it's the building code, or if it's the property maintenance code, or if it's a combination, the fire code, the various codes. And this is something that your GC would be extremely important to collaborate with you on. You want to know what are the possible flags that this inspector is looking for, so that you can make sure that they're not there. It can be some easy things. So if you have a space that's supposed to be vacant and isn't supposed to have anything in it, but you have things in it, and you have an inspector coming, you need to take things out of that space. If it's a vacant space, you have to show that it's vacant. The floor plans and the layout have to be consistent with what your building plans say. So if you've, on a construction site, I'm not talking about, this is like for a final inspection more than in the midst. Of course, if you're in the midst of a construction site, the inspector is going to know there's active construction, and they're not thinking that this is the inspection. But once you get the inspection for a certificate of occupancy, that's when everything has to be all put together in a way so that everything is in the right place. Scheduling an inspection, there are going to be times when you're going to be able to schedule an inspection and times where you're not. So the times that you're able to schedule it, if you're not ready, then you need to reach out to the inspector and say, I want to schedule it for this time. You can take that kind of an initiative. You don't have to basically subject your property to the fates of when this inspector is going to come. You can try to put some order and predictability into it. That involves communicating with the inspector, and that's not a very easy thing. The LNI doesn't make it easy for you to do that. Basically, inspectors are supposed to be in the field for most of their working day, but typically they are available first thing every morning. And you can call the district office and find out for sure, but it usually is around like 8 to 9 or 7:30 to 8:30. It's usually like an hour or so that inspectors are doing paperwork and going through their agenda for the day. They typically don't have cell phones that you can communicate with because they don't want to be interrupted while they're doing all their inspections. If they're with you, you appreciate them not being interrupted while they're inspecting your property, and it goes the for vice versa. But that makes it really the time window really narrow, and so it can be frustrating because you can have days go by where you're trying to reach out to the inspector and it doesn't work out. Just know that and kind of build that into your calculation. Dennis, anything you want to add on inspections?
Well, naturally, the inspections are being done through Eclipse now. Some of them anyway, and some of them are still, a lot of them are still being done at the district office. Immediately, that first impression with the inspector, you want to make sure that you gather all his information and find out from that inspector when is the best time that he likes to be contacted. And then try to stay in contact with them, not on a daily basis. I mean, as your project goes further along, you want to get in contact with them and say, hey, look, we're this far ahead. We're planning on having everything ready by such and such. But normally, like Steve said, the best time is in the morning, first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's 7 o'clock. You know, I've been known to get inspectors around 7 o'clock, between 7 and 8, because after 8:30, they've already left on the street, and it's very difficult to get them probably up till 2:30 or so. And sometimes you can't email them. If they have an email, get their email, because they will respond back to you.
It's also hard to just even get a message taken by someone else at LNI during the rest of the day in the district office. They may say they're taking a message for you. It may never get transmitted at other places. There may be supervisors available, but typically they're not very available. So email is great, but the first thing in the morning, you get to be a real early morning person if you want to deal with LNI. That's the way that I've always done it. So code violations, that's something I do a fair amount of. I help small businesses who've encountered various code violations and developers. So before I go through the two charts, the good things and to do and the not to do, I just want to give you a frame. And this is something that I found consistently, really across the board with everyone I've worked with at LNI and in the law department. And this is what the deal is. Their primary goal is to close out any violation that they have. They are happiest when they can check it off. It shows that they have that's their goal. That's what they're trying to accomplish. So if you can show them both through your words and through your actions that you are cooperative, that you're not going to be, oppositional to them, that you want to help them close out this violation. You want it closed out because you want them off your back. There's no question about that. But they will, the more you can show them that you want to be helpful and cooperative and that you are really doing your best, they will actually be generous and they will cooperate with you and help you resolve the code violations faster. They reserve their like wrath and their like all the kind of tricks that they do to folks that are basically giving them a hard time, and then they just like serve it back to you in large proportions. But if you can keep on their good side by basically showing them that, like, hey, you want to do everything right, you want to comply, even if you think it's completely ridiculous that they're being that it's hyper technical, that they're just trying to like shut you down or ruin your day or whatever it is. Like, you can have all those feelings. Don't share those feelings with them. Put on a professional face and show them how cooperative you want to be. And then you can tell everybody else what you think of the LNI inspector when they leave.
Absolutely.
As long as you can do that, you're going to have a relatively good relationship and good experience. So when you get a code violation, always file an appeal. Unlike zoning appeals, which cost money, appeals from code violations are actually free. And now they're done online through Eclipse. So you can do it yourself or get an expediter or an attorney to do it for you. You have to read the notice carefully to find out where you're supposed to file the appeal. If you have a fire code violation, it typically goes to the Board of Safety and Fire Prevention, which is housed at the fire department headquarters on Spring Garden. If it's most of the time, it would go to the Board of LNI Review. You're going to need a full copy of all the notices of violations. Sometimes you're not going to get them. Maybe it got handed to a contractor and you don't have it. If you communicate with the district office of LNI, they should be able to give it to you through email. I don't know, Dennis, are you able to find those notice of violations on Eclipse also when you're connected to a property?
Yes, sometimes you are. A lot of times the violations are on atlas.gov, as you know.
Well, yeah, you can see the ones on Atlas though. That's not the version that you need to.
Not the actual.
That's not the actual violation. Yes, you can find out. You can go into Atlas and you can see what the L&I property history is, and you can see what kind of violations are open.
Right.
But that printout from Atlas isn't going to help you file your appeal. They won't accept that. They need the actual violations.
I normally go to the district.
Okay, well, you do it the old-fashioned way, with getting rid of.
I pick up the phone and I call the district.
Yeah. Okay. So when you talk, the inspectors who give you violations are different from the inspectors who go out when they're inspecting your progress on your permit. But those inspectors are also the same deal. You can call them early in the morning. You can talk to them. You want to find out more about the violation because they're going to help you map out like a roadmap for how to get the violation closed out. That's important because, like I said, if you show them that you want to solve it, they will tell you, okay, this is what you have to do. And they'll give you the roadmap. And then if you do those things, then they will come back and they'll close it out and you'll be happy. Things not to do. Don't take the blame for someone else. So if your contractor screws up and triggers a code violation, you as the property owner are going to get the code violation. They may not know that it was who did it in terms of the contractor. You might have a GC registered on your building permits, but it might be a sub. And then the GC gets hit with it also, but it's really the sub. Whoever it was, you want to be able to communicate to L&I and say, this is the sub who did it, and then L&I will direct the code violation to them, and because they're trying to find out who is the one who is responsible. You typically only have 30 days to file an appeal, so don't ignore it. It doesn't go away by ignoring it. Also, don't assume that you can just resolve this really quickly so you don't have to appeal it. I have clients who thought that was going to be fine, and then COVID happened and nothing could get resolved for months and months, and that the appeal deadlines don't get put on hold all the time. If you get letters or phone calls from L&I, deal with them, and also and figure out when you're over your head, get some help with it. Super important. So,
hey, Steve, if you don't mind, before we move on from code violations, I have a quick question here from Oscar. And just a reminder, Oscar, if I'm allowing you to talk, so if you want to follow up, you can unmute your mic. But he is asking, where can we find a list of definitions for the violation codes listed under the violations tab in Atlas? This is for use when you're doing due diligence on potential new property purchases.
So, there are multiple codes in the Philadelphia Code that deal with buildings. So there's the building code, there's the fire code, there's the plumbing code, there's the property maintenance code. And when you get a violation notice, it's going to give you a citation to the actual section of the applicable code that you're in violation of. That's why it's important for you to get the full copy of your notice of violation, and that'll have it all listed out. When it'll have abbreviations. So when it says FC, that's the fire code. When it says PM, it's the property maintenance code. And then you can go to the city's code of ordinances, and the building codes are around Title 4. They got kind of renumbered, but they're kind of embedded in, I believe it's Title 4, and you can click down and you can find the exact section. But you can also talk directly to the inspector, and the inspector will tell you exactly what section and where in the code you're in violation. That's a great question. You know what, Derek, we forgot some of the polls because we kind of flew through things.
Sure.
The last couple polls.
Yeah, sure. I'll quickly launch the second one real quick. So it should be up on the screen now. And maybe while we're go out of order here, can I ask you a few more questions there?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So if you're just listening, be sure to fill out that poll that's up on your screen now. But here's a good one. Maybe Dennis, you can give some insight on this.
Go ahead.
David Green is asking, what is the average cost to hire an expediter? I don't know if you want to go into your personal costs or what you typically do.
It depends on the size of the project. It depends on residential or commercial. Typically, residential single family could be anywhere from $250 to $350. Commercial, it gets a little bit higher, and the prices really are based on how many occurrences do you have to deal, how many times do you have to deal with L&I, and it comes into hours. For example, I'm working on a $15 million project right now, and so I know I have to deal with L&I maybe 10 to 12 times in the course of that project. So I have to set the rate accordingly to how many times I deal with L&I. If it's a single family, I'm not dealing with L&I on that many occasions. If that answers, the question. But they can call me and I can give them a better price. But no, typically it's based on your interaction with L&I and how many times you have to interact with L&I, because that costs. That's where the cost comes in.
Great.
So hopefully that answers the question.
Sure. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, cool. So the poll is wrapped up here. I'm sharing the results now. So you should see it on your screen, Steve, if you want to go over that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, a good number of folks in the JUMPinar have gotten the rude awakening of the zoning. All right, let's do the last two poll questions on the code violations.
Great. So poll 3 should be active now. Hopefully there's no more typos in there. But yes, so while we're waiting for some answers on that one, maybe I can ask another question.
Sure.
Dennis, this is another question related to the expediters. Tyrus is asking, do you have any credible expediters that you would recommend? I don't know if you want to share information here, or maybe they can follow up with you afterwards if you have some colleagues.
Well, here's the thing. It's it's funny. Expediters are very not sociable. We really don't know that many, but I do have a few that I deal with. I first recommend myself and my company, but yeah, I have a few. If you don't like my prices, I can tell you someone else's, but I will tell you that mine are lower than most.
Great. That's what I like to hear. So I will include your email, Dennis, on the follow-up blast that we do this. So if anybody has any questions or would like to use your services, they'll be able to. Okay, so we have a good amount of votes here, and I'm going to share the results now. Steve, you should see them now.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing that 92% have never filed an appeal, Steve.
Yeah. I'm not surprised because for the most part, when my clients come to me with code violations, they typically come to me after the appeal period is over and they haven't filed an appeal. Now, there's sometimes where you get multiple code violations. You'll get an initial one. That's when you're really supposed to file the appeal. But then you have opportunities to file appeals. You'll get like a second notice and a final notice. Sometimes you'll get like up to 3 notices. You can file appeals for each of those, but really, L&I takes the position that if you didn't file the appeal the first time, then you're really you haven't stopped them from being able to go to court against you and seek crazy amounts of fines and injunctions.
Steve, I've had some success, and you probably have had some success with if they miss the appeals, dealing with the dealing with the inspectors and getting them to understand that we have a development plan in order to eliminate the violations. And a lot of them have been agreeable to that.
Yeah, That's true. And I mean, I'm in court on a number of cases where we're working very closely with the inspector and with the law department to resolve the code violations. And so when they see that we are making progress, but we need more time, they are cooperative, and they're not seeking. They're entering into consent orders with us to get continuances to give us more time to come into compliance. And when you do finally come into compliance, even in a court case where they've been asking for thousands of dollars in fines, they typically wipe all those out except for the cost of each reinspection. They insist on recouping, which is usually just a couple $100 typically, what they charge for the reinspections, but they normally are seeking thousands of dollars in a day in fines on these cases, and they roll all that back. And once that's why I said once they see that the property has been cleared of violations and they closed off all the violations, then that's their goal. Their goal isn't to extract thousands of dollars from good people in Philadelphia who have run into trouble, with their property. So fortunately, they're a relatively good ending for these cases.
Steve, we're still on the violations. One of the things that a lot of, I would say, entrepreneurs and developers do because of timelines is that they believe that that they can do work without permits.
Right.
And I want to just caution everybody on this call. It's better to be safe than sorry, because the sorry is the expense that you do not want to pay 3 times the amount for the permit. I'll give you a case in point. Had a person that had started working without a building permit, and the building permit final cost would have been, I think, around maybe $200 or so. The permit ended up being about $852 because they were working without the initial building permit. They will charge you on the back end. So if you started a project and you didn't do it with a permit, get a permit. It's cost savings in the long run. So,
Dennis, let's talk. You reminded me that we should be talking about the make safe permits, which is a
yes.
special category of permits that comes into play. Now, this can be, we have a mutual client. You and I are both working to help a client who got some code violations, had work done, didn't pull permits for the work. The work was done well. All the code violations are in reality completely resolved. But when Al and I came out to reinspect, they said, we can't close this. You never pulled a permit to do this work. So it doesn't matter that it was done 100% well. According to Al and I, without that permit being pulled, no work has been done at all. And even though everyone can see with their eyes that that everything has been done. So when people are in that situation, sometimes folks, in the JUMPinar are going to be buying properties that have that maybe have pre-existing code violations, before they bought them, and maybe the previous owner did work either themselves or through some kind of a contractor who didn't pull the permits. And now you are the new owner and you have a situation where Al and I comes to you and says, like, you have to pull a permit to fix this, but it's already fixed. You have to pull a permit to like repair some electrical or plumbing or structural issues. And you go to a contractor and they say to you, well, there's nothing for me to do. It's already been done. So I'm not going to go and pull a permit for you because I didn't do that work. And if I pull a permit, it's my bond and my license on the line in case that person didn't do it right. So what's your experience with that, Dennis? And how does the Make Safe permit system work?
Well, the Make Safe system works when, first of all, just to go back to what you just mentioned, my experience has been, one is that I normally engage an engineer so that the engineer can say that the structural is safe and that basically rewrite what has already been done. So that way you have a professional that is certifying that the structural, all the violations have been taken care of based off of what they have analyzed and viewed. So that's the quickest way to solve that particular issue. Get an engineer and they can verify that. The Make Safe, all Make Safe violations, the applications have to go to L&I. They have to be presented face to face. You have to have a licensed contractor with the city. You have to have more than likely an engineer's report. Those type of permits I can pull, an expediter can pull with a licensed contractor. But someone has to physically go to L&I and pull that permit.
Mm. So
I just recently had one on a retaining wall. The retaining wall was a Make Safe, and the person was trying to pull a plumbing permit in the house, and we actually had to go down to L&I to pull a plumbing permit because there's no such thing as a Make Safe plumbing permit. So we had to go there and show proof that it was not part of the Make Safe. So those are the kind of things that we encounter.
Okay, well,
there's a lot of questions, I think.
Yeah. So maybe we can go through it and get started on the Q&A. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to both of you for that great presentation. I think that was a great way of breaking it down in 4 parts, and I'm sure it's going to be a great reference for people as the recording. But for the people who are here now live, we do have some questions. So I see Ugo Opera has a couple here, and I'm going to allow him to talk. So if he's in here and able, maybe he can unmute his microphone. Ugo, is that a possibility?
Hey.
There you go. There he is. Ugo, do you want to ask your 2 questions?
Yeah, so question number 1 would be, so when you have an RM1 and it's already in use as not in use, but it's in use but needs to be renovated, how, what's the threshold before it crosses over and now you need a sprinkler system would be question number 1.
Okay, you said it's 3, Steve, it's a 3, is it a 3 apartments?
Yeah, so it's properly zoned, right? So it's RM1, the square feet of the lot, allows by right the 3 units. So all of that checks out. There's no use permit in Atlas, right? And then there's no prior rental license for 3 units in Atlas. But there are 3 kitchens, there are 3 meters, and you're going in to renovate all 3 units, and you're going to pull the permits and then do the use permit. But where do you cross the line when they say, all right, you need a sprinkler system?
Well, Steve, I'm going to let you answer it. I'm dealing with a situation now whereby they requested a sprinkler system for 3 units. So, Steve.
So this is, this goes into some of the powers of the Board of Safety and Fire Prevention, which is this appeals board that handles issues around the fire code. That is, they handle appeals both from code violations, but they also handle appeals from denials of building permits. So if you similar to when you go to the zoning board and you say that you have a hardship and you can't use your property the way it's currently zoned, and therefore you want to use it in a way that's not allowed under the zoning code because you have hardship. Although it's easier to establish the hardship with the Board of Safety and Fire Prevention. So if L&I is telling you that your building plans require you to comply with the most up-to-date fire code, which requires sprinklers, and you feel that is financially crippling to your project and you can't, and it makes it an unaffordable project, then you can go the route of having them deny your building permit and appealing that to the Board of Safety and Fire Prevention, and ask that board to give you a variance from the fire code. They would have to be, you would have to be able to show them that the fire suppression system that you would have in that building would be safe enough, even though it's not up to the most current code, that you're not endangering the occupants of that building. If they felt that you were going to be able to create a safe environment, then they could give you relief and you wouldn't have to meet the current code.
Okay, great. Thanks both guys. And then Ugo, do you want to ask the part 2 there?
Oh, he's muted, it looks like.
Let's see. There you go. Ugo, you there? All right. All right. Well, I'll just ask it for you, so we don't spend too much time on that. Okay. There. He was just asking, does a vacant property license automatically mean that continued was interrupted? Maybe that means construction was interrupted, or?
Oh no, a vacant property license. I think he's talking about the use was interrupted.
Oh, use. Yeah, right.
Right. So that is actually a question, a factual question. Not like I guess what I mean by that is that it's dependent on the specific facts of that particular situation. It's not like I can't give you a general question, a general answer to it. So what that basically means is that there can be scenarios where you are intending that you have a space, it's dedicated to a particular use, it's been historically that use, but you may have lost a tenant and you may be actively marketing it and you may intend to use it for that way, but it's empty, it's vacant. And so you're taking you're putting out a vacant license because the city requires that if you have a structure and it's vacant, you have to get a vacant license for it. But that's different than it's been abandoned, but it's a factual question. So if you can show that, like, no, you haven't abandoned it, you've been intending to continue to use it the way it was used before, but you just have been unsuccessful in finding a new entity to come in and use it that way, then, and that could be residential or commercial or industrial, it doesn't matter, then you would say no, even if it's been 3 years, there hasn't been an abandonment of the use, because abandonment of the use is not strictly just a chronological test. It's also it's like a totality of the circumstances.
Okay, great, thanks. Yep. Okay, so we're going to move on to some of the other questions here in the Q&A tab. We have one from Stefan Williams asking, how do you get a permit for a dumpster for debris, removing old concrete footway and need to dispose of it?
Yeah, that's an L&I permit, and you can get it off of the CLIP system. I mean, that answers the question. Is Stefan on there?
Yeah.
I just needed a little bit more than
Sure, Stefan, I allowed you to talk here if you want to follow up. If not, we'll move on to the next one.
Stefan, can you hear us?
It looks like he's muted still.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So I think we're still figuring this out. This is the first time we've done the whole unmute thing. But if you do get allowed to talk, just make sure you unmute the mic yourself, because I can only ask you to unmute. But yeah, I think that answer is sufficient. Thanks, Dennis.
Right. Yes, you can get it on Eclipse.
Great. All right. Erwin is asking, if he already sent in his request for the permit, does it make sense to use an expediter to submit another plan review?
I saw that on the question. Now, if he's getting additional information, if he needs additional information and he needs assistance, he can always associate someone with the permit. He can always associate someone if he needs assistance, if he feels as though he needs assistance in moving the process.
Okay. Yeah, Urban's here and he has his mic unmuted. If you want to maybe follow up, Urban, did you have any other questions?
Yeah. Well, so like I checked the review status and it said like December 9,999. So
Right.
I thought I was like, oh, so you guys get forever to review my plan.
No, when did you turn it? When did you turn it in?
September the 7th.
Oh, okay. You turned it in September the 7th. Did you pay extra for any expediting?
I did not know. My contractor filled it out and he sent me the copy of the application that he submitted. So wait a minute. You turned it in September the 7th, and today is the 22nd. Yes.
So is this a residential or commercial?
Residential.
So typically, it may take 20 days.
Okay.
They have been quicker for 10 days. Exactly, if you don't mind, is a building permit, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a building permit with plans, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it may take a little bit longer, but it should also show when the review is coming up. If you get in contact with me, I can go a little more in depth, and you can do this on your own. But you can call me and I can walk you through some steps. No, I won't.
I'd be glad.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erwin. Okay, so I think we're coming up on time here, so I'm gonna just shoot through these last pile of questions that we have here. And if you guys have any follow-up you want to ask the people, I'll unmute their mics. But Nancy is asking, does the same inspector stay with the project throughout, or do they switch along the project for L&I?
They typically, if it's a building inspector, that building inspector will stay throughout, but it may come occasions that the inspectors might get switched, but it doesn't happen too often.
Okay. Marlon is asking, what if you did all the work but did not call in for the final C of O? And I'm guessing that means certificate of occupancy. It's kind of a general what if question, but is a situation you guys see?
Well, yeah, absolutely. But the question becomes, he didn't call in for the CO, and how long has it been since the completion, the inspection? That's a question. The question is how long, listen, so he didn't call in for the CO, and was the CO, here's the other question, was the CO a part of the permit? I mean, was it, when they applied for the permit, did they include CO, that this includes a CO? So there's some questions there that need to be answered.
Great, and he just messaged us and said that he'll be in touch, and he has both your contacts that I'll send out. So hopefully.
Okay, all right.
Okay, next we have a question from Elizabeth asking, has the pandemic affected timing for getting permits or scheduling inspections?
The inspections are coming back a little bit. better. In terms of getting permits, I get them every day. I get 15 at least a week.
Mm-hmm. Great. Roger is just commenting that, I guess, a general word of advice that violations stay with the building and not the owners. So, it's not just your responsibility, but the buildings. Mark is asking, why does L&I deny your application the initial time? I'm sure there's many reasons, but maybe there's a significant reason that usually happens right away why it's denied.
Well, I mean, if it's a zoning application, like in general, the L&I will deny an application if it doesn't meet every single criteria in whatever code it is. So if it requires any kind of a deviation from what the code says, then they have to deny it, and then you need to appeal it to the next level. So that's what happens with zoning a lot. If you're proposing to use your property in a way that's not allowed under the zoning code, or if you're creating an addition or some kind of new construction and you're changing the dimensional footprint or the height or different dimensional aspects of a building that are, so you're not meeting all those dimensional rules, then if everything doesn't 100% meet what the code says, then L&I has to deny it.
Okay, thanks. Next is from Tyrus asking, he's asking for a friend. He says, what if work was started on a project without permits, but wants to now get them pulled? Is it too late to avoid violations? And what is the best course of action to take in a case like this?
Well, first of all, the question is, which sounds like he didn't receive any violations so far. So if he hasn't received any violations so far, he should definitely get the permits and do the requirements for the permits, whether it be an architect with drawings. But it sounds like he didn't get any violations. If he didn't get any violations, that's a good thing. So now we can at least apply with drawings for the permit.
All right, but Dennis, just follow up with that. So let's say it's the kind of permit that requires intermediate inspections throughout the course of the project, like it's electrical or plumbing, whatever it is, where the city goes out to inspect it and it's already been done. They're supposed to not do certain phases of the project until the inspector has been there. When you have a situation like that, then what do you recommend they do? So
first of all, you're right. Either way, you still have to get the permit, right? And then depends on when you purchase the house, right? Or the building, right? If you say for example, I purchased the building 30 days ago and I want to legalize everything that's there. Or I've had this building for 30 days. I want to make sure everything's legal. It's all wording. You have to make sure that you word it correctly. And when the inspector comes, you want to be honest. Hey, listen, the contractor started the work. I thought he had a permit. When I realized he didn't, I went the right way. And normally when you're honest and open about what happened, they may not give you a violation. But to Steve's point, there might be a violation coming in there for starting work without the permit.
Great, thanks, Dennis. Next here is from Kemi asking, how long does a zoning permit last? I'm purchasing a duplex, it's RM1, it's completely renovated, but the zoning permit was approved in 2016. Renovations were completed in 2019 and is just now being sold, so the property has been vacant. Do I need to apply for a new use permit and rental license when I now go to rent the property?
Okay, so it's RM1. That means that a duplex is allowed. So a zoning permit lasts for an unlimited amount of time, assuming that once you pull a zoning permit, you meet the time factors that are in the very beginning. So if you get a zoning permit for a change of use, you have 6 months to put that change of use into force. If you don't, then the zoning permit is considered abandoned. The same as if it's for like renovation or new construction. If you have 3 years, if you don't do the work within that time, then it's considered abandoned. But if there, it could be that there never was a zoning permit issued for this, but you can get it over the counter. If it's RM1 and you have a duplex, over the counter, I guess now really means through Eclipse,
Right.
so through the virtual counter.
Yeah, 5 to 10 days.
Yeah, that's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah, so the short answer is that yes, she needs to get a zoning use permit for the rental license, I would think.
Great. Steve, do you have something to add or no? No.
Yeah, no. That's just another example where you need certain permits in order to allow you to get other permits. So you always need like a correct zoning permit in order to get building permits. You also need those to get certain licenses. Like if you're doing a rental license, if you have a duplex and you're going to bring in tenants, then you're going to need to show that you have proper zoning, which means that you have to show the existence of a zoning permit, and then they'll allow you to have a housing rental license.
Great. Next question, and just a couple more left here, and then we'll wrap things up. It's from Joyce asking, is it hard to change the use of a CMX1 to be used for a dance studio or art studio? And if so, why?
Okay, so I know a lot of people think that when you want to change what happens on a property that you're changing the zoning, but really that isn't what's happening. You're getting an exception or a variance from the zoning. So I haven't looked at the table to see whether a dance studio or art studio is allowed in CMX1, but let's assume that it's not. Then what you would be doing would be you would be applying for a dance studio or artist studio in that space. If it's not allowed, then you would get a refusal. And then you would go through the community engagement process, the RCO process, and go before the zoning board. And it's either going to be a variance or a special exception, depending on those are the two ways that you can do something in a property that's not specifically allowed. But the property, even when you get a variance for an art studio or a dance studio, the property will still be zoned CMX1, but in addition to its CMX1 zoning, it now has another designation, which is that you're also specifically allowed to do a dance studio or an artist studio because of the action of the zoning board.
Great, thanks, Steve. And last question, it's sort of a two-parter from Anthony Smith here, asking that he owns a multifamily duplex that's zoned as RSA3. I would like to convert the basement into an efficiency. What is needed to get that zoned? And also, does he need a sprinkler system for the whole basement, or for the whole building, or the basement if it is zoned as multifamily?
So, well, we don't know if it is zoned RSA3, but we don't know if he has either a variance or a pre-existing authority as a non-conforming use. If at one point the property was legal as a duplex, but it sounds like he now wants to convert it into a triplex. So even if it was like historically allowed as a duplex, you're looking to convert it into now what's called multifamily, because the code goes single family, a duplex, and then anything 3 or more family units is considered multifamily. You would have to apply for a variance for that, and you would go through the community engagement process and want to get the support of the district council person. And depending on what the attitude is of the position of the near neighbors and of the council person, it may be hard, or it may not be so hard. In terms of the sprinkler system for the whole building, that if you're not renovating the building, if you're just basically, you know, rehabbing it, you're finishing the basement. That doesn't seem to me to be something that would qualify. That would be more of a repair than a renovation. So,
Hey, Steve.
yeah.
So I would add that, is the basement 7 feet high?
That's a good point. Yeah, because it has to be 7 feet high to meet the code for a dwelling unit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, that's, I see 2 more questions in, but I'm sharing my screen so I can't see them pop up. You know, maybe we can just move on, or is they quickly addressed?
They're all from Anthony Smith.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Well, that wraps it up for this evening, and I just want to give everybody the information that's upcoming. On the 28th, which is next Monday at the same time, 7 p.m., we're having another JUMPinar on insurance for investors and how to protect your property. Jacob Gray will be presenting that, who is a fellow Jumpstarter. And on October 5th, the next Monday at 7 p.m., we will have a discussion on eviction alternatives. And you can find out more about all the events that are going to be happening at jumpstartgermantown.com under the events page. And also, as always, you can view the recordings at jumpstartgermantown.com/jumpinars. We usually have them posted by noon the next day. We send out that link to everybody who has registered as well. And there's also all the previous JUMPinars that we have done, including those on this same topic from a few months back, I believe. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Steve and Dennis. This was really, really great information. Zoning L&I is such a deep well that I feel like, you know, we could have a JUMPinar just on these topics every day for a year and still, you know, still be learning. So we really appreciate your insight. It was a really great conversation having the 2 of you, kind of both of your perspectives and stories. And so really insightful. I took down some notes. All of these also help us as Jumpstarter staff, because we are, you know, learning along with the Jumpstarters, and we can better educate them. So yeah, this was really great. Excited to share this video with other folks who weren't able to make it, although we had a great turnout. I think it was up to like 90 folks that showed up. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful, and I have a very fond, special place for Jumpstart Germantown, so I'm happy to always step up and do these.
Great.
Thank you, Steve, for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't do it without you, man. So that's the way it works.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do more of these co-presented JUMPinars, because the back and forth and kind of the pinging off each other is definitely valuable. So thanks both of you for attending.
Sure.
But yeah, so other than that wraps things up, and we'll see you next Monday at 7 p.m. All right. Thanks everybody for coming.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.